What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you another week of what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan, joined, as always, by my trusty co-host, the world traveler, Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, what's going on, man?
Oh yeah, we back in the
We out here.
building. What's up?
How was Yellowstone?
Yeah, it was good. I didn't see Kevin Costner. I didn't see the Duttons, but it's a nice stretch of undeveloped land. Good time.
Well, Dave, I'm sure that it won't stay that way forever, so we'll enjoy it while we can.
It's
Favorite?
in the law. It's protected, baby.
Yes, because if we know anything, it's that our laws are unchangeable
Yeah, it's
in this
true.
country. That's for sure. Dave, what was your favorite wildlife that you saw?
Gosh, tough one. A lot of good stuff out there. Always fun to see animals that you don't see back east, in the wild, of course. Um, I really like seeing a lot of the elk. I got two really close encounters with male bulls with the full rack of antlers, uh, and that's just really cool because it's like really hard to see, and yet they weren't as hard to see there. Pretty cool.
That's awesome. Well, if you have traveled to Yellowstone, let Dave know what your favorite part was. But Dave, we have some catching up to do. We did our Kendrick Lamar rankings for our last episode. If people haven't checked that out, please go and debate us in the comments about what
Mm.
Kendrick's ranking should be. But now we have to really get to some things that we missed. And there's so many things we're not going to get to. But one place we have to start this week is with a rock release. The first time since 2013 we get a Yeah Yeah Yeahs record. Cool It Down, dropping not this past weekend, the one before, September 30th. And as someone that's a big fan of that scene, the 2000s alternative rock scene in New York City, um, yeah, yes, we're always kind of a band that I was like aware of, but like I feel like I didn't really go that deep into the discography. I know the hits, right? I know Maps, I know Heads Will Roll. I'd probably prefer the remixes to Heads Will Roll, but that's just my own personal preference. Still a great song. So I wasn't super excited when I was like, oh, the Yeah Yeah Yeahs are back after this hiatus. They stopped performing together in 2017. Uh, actually, no, 2014. They came back 2017. Sorry, but Dave, this record fucking rocked. At least I thought so. What did you think?
Yeah. No, there was definitely some really cool moments for sure. It didn't just feel like a generic comeback by any stretch. I think, like you said, I think whenever you get anybody from the 2000s rock scene in New York back in the news with a new release, we had a Strokes album 2 years ago. Like that was obviously of the same vein, and to not have Yeah Yeah Yes come back, I feel like they're perhaps like the least populist of that group. You think of like LCD Sound System and the Strokes, and Yeah Yeah Yeahs are a bit off to the side in the sense that they're a bit more iconoclast, I guess. And because they've been away for so long, except for like one-off like reunion appearances, I haven't really thought about them too much, right? Like you said, Heads Will Roll remix by A-Track featured prominently in Project X. Huge moment, great remix.
Mm.
That's about what I think of first, honestly, in terms of recent memory. But yeah, it was pretty cool to hear them come back with their was it fifth album? Yeah, fifth album, like you said, first since 2013, which apparently they kind of whipped together in like 5 months' time. On top of that, too, just kind of
Impressive.
met back up. They don't all live in New York anymore. Met back up, recorded this, and yeah, I think there was definitely some cool moments. I did enjoy it.
Yeah, Karen O hasn't missed a beat to me. Like her vocals are still like so haunting and like really distinctive. But I was just like blown away by how true this felt to them as like a band from the earlier era. You mentioned that this didn't really feel like, a older rock band. This kind of felt more just kind of in their wheelhouse. And I think in the first couple of songs, I was just like totally blown away. The first song, Spitting Off the Edge of the World, with Perfume Genius, is this like slow build, and I just like thought that was incredible. Like Karen O's vocals around the chorus are just like mind blowing to me and just grabbed me. But then a few songs later, you get Wolf, right, which is like it started off kind of corny, right? Because it's like I was hungry like a wolf kind of thing kind of going on.
Right.
And then it gets to the part where the synths come in, and
Yeah.
I was just like, "Oh, let's go!" Like this feels like classic Yeah Yeah Yeahs right here, and it was just really really awesome. Had me from there to the end of the album. What about you though?
Yeah, I really enjoyed Wolf. It has this like really big like orchestral moment, and then the tempo just like skyrockets. It's like,
Mhm.
wow, yeah, this is really cool. And then I think the song immediately after that, Fleas,
Yeah.
I also enjoyed quite a bit just because of the drum work on
Mhm.
there. Uh, I like the closer Mars as well. Uh, but like like you said, I think Karen O has like she has a trademark, unique vocal delivery and sound to her singing. So when the songs pick up, throughout the track list, like she's then able to like kind of elevate those tracks on top of that
Yeah.
because she's a really strong performer.
Yeah, she's an incredibly strong performer, and I just really love her aesthetic. And like, if you read "Meet Me in the Bathroom," there's so many like cool stories about her. She's just
Mm,
a really cool character in rock. Nice to have her back. Hope if they don't continue making albums together as frequently, that she's just kind of around doing stuff, like
yeah,
doing guest vocal features. Um, I'd really love to see her like jump on some of these EDM albums that we talk about, like Swedish House Mafia and her together. I feel like could
yeah.
make some really cool shit.
Avalanches.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, Avalanche would just be incredible. But
Yeah,
um, so yeah, just great to have YAS back, and this was way above what I expected. So good shit.
right. And you mentioned the Lizzie Goldman book, Meet Me in the Bathroom. That has now become a documentary film as well, following the
Yes.
book. And I believe that is slowly releasing this fall. So if you're interested in that, the like reporting basically and storytelling of that 2000s rock scene in New York in its heyday, specifically featuring around like the Strokes, Interpol, Yeah Yeah Yeahs, LCD. Watch that doc, read that book because there's a lot of talk about that lately, of course.
We're gonna put a song from the YAS onto our Nostalgia Best of 2022 playlist. But Dave, let's move on to another artist that I think we both really like and have a history with, and that's Kid Cudi, who dropped his newest album, Entergalactic, this past weekend, along with an animated movie on Netflix. And our guy Cuddy, I mean, he's been back for a while now, but I think really like hitting his stride as an older artist. It seems, Man on the Moon 3. I think we were really impressed with and really liked. Um, we get Intergalactic as the follow up here, and it's
Hmm.
like he seems to be kind of finding his stride. And for someone who I feel like his songs were so specific to like a certain like age in my life. They were very like 18 to 22 in my mind, like this kind of like stay, or maybe even like earlier, like high school, like type
Hmm.
of age. I feel like it was going to be hard for him to kind of move into this stage, but I feel like he's kind of done it pretty well. How did you feel about Intergalactic as like a entrance into his album discography?
Right, and yeah, so this is notably Cudi's eighth album, and it's been less than 2 years since Man on the Moon 3 came out into 2020. But I believe he actually recorded this before Man on the Moon 3 came out. But of course, Intergalactic is also like the soundtrack to his Netflix film, animated Netflix film that just released alongside the album. And that's kind of how I've been thinking about it, where Cudi has been acting for quite some time himself, but has really also been in the mix as a producer. And it seems like he's finding fulfillment in addition to being a musician these days, which is great because I think, he's kind of openly talked about like, my name's Kid Cudi. Like, I don't know if I'm going to be a 50-year-old rapper. And it's kind of fun to hear him say it that way. But uh, I don't necessarily have any problem with that because it definitely sounds like he's just kind of tweaking his interests and to find new inspiration and basically making a full-on concept album
Mhm.
this late into his career after closing the book on Man on the Moon. Pretty cool. Um, I just appreciate that effort at a tie-in, and I think the lower stakes of this like concept album because it's like not really about him. It's about like the character in the movie, right? Like it's all hypothetical. It's all storytelling. Like I think his lyricism, his songwriting actually like is stronger because of that reason.
Yeah.
Like I don't think anyone ever really we never really say Cudi is like a master writer or anything. No one really say that. He's a vibe guy. He's an emotion guy, right? Insert Cudi hum here. Like the feeling you get from his music, and I think he actually did a really good job of kind of putting that Cudi appeal into like a framework that's more defined the way Entergalactic is through that prism of it being a soundtrack to a brand new movie.
Yeah, I think that that's the right way to look at this, because I think as I was listening through the dings I would have, the takeaways that weren't so good for me, were a lot of me getting to like the middle of the album towards the end, where it all starts to kind of feel a little bit samey. The beats really weren't like that diverse from each
Hmm.
other, and I was starting to kind of feel like this album was becoming a little sleepy for me. But when you think about it in terms of this like visual concept album, I do think it makes a lot of sense. I think the visuals that I have seen, I didn't watch the full thing, but I saw a couple of clips. I think it all looks really cool. As you can see it on my background if you're watching on YouTube. And I think there's enough songs on here for me to walk away and be like, Cuddy did a really nice job with this, and like I said, I think he sounds super confident with where he's at right now, and it's never fair to like compare people per se, but you think about one of his peers, Kanye, and just like the directions that they have were going in and where they are at now. Like Cuddy has like established himself, and similar to Jay Z, have really like found their stride in this next phase of their career, whereas other of his peers aren't doing that so well. So I'm just
No.
impressed with where he's at.
Yeah,
Um,
totally. Yeah, I think that's exactly right.
What was the music on here? What were the songs that really stood out to you?
Right, and I think ultimately, like I'm always like, well, it's about the records, right?
Yeah.
It's about what we actually get that we care about here. And to me, like the TV special slash movie, that's like bonus material to me. Like
Right.
I care about the music first, and yeah, nothing holds a candle to his classic work of the past. But
Oh
again, we
yeah.
shouldn't be expecting to hear that either. That being said, there were some moments I enjoyed. I thought just kind of like more high level speaking, new mode right off the bat. I
Mhm.
really enjoyed the melody from Cuddy on that. Um, and there's a few songs like that where it's like, yeah, it's kind of vibey. It's almost kind of like sparse. Like the verses aren't really that like thick at all, but Cuddy's able to kind of fill out the song with his presence in the way he can. So I thought only new mode I think is a good example of that. But then right after that, do what I want. His delivery on
Yeah.
that, rapping wise, definitely more of a throwback vibe. Definitely
Mhm.
reminds me of some of the best work of his past. Now lyrically, again, not the strongest. You know, I think someone like Little Uzi Vert's probably a little better served to do the "Now I do what I want" type thing with minimal lyricism. But again, like I think the Cuddy's performance really stood out there. Can't Believe It with 2 Chainz as well. I've really enjoyed Cuddy's rapping on that. Reminds me of the past. Um, there's other songs here and there that are, I think, nice flourishes. Like there's some songs I forget the names of which ones they are, but like there's some times where Cuddy's vocals, he's almost like ad libbing himself in a way
Mhm.
of like responding to himself as if it was a separate voice. Like that, I thought those kind of touches were pretty cool. Probably fit in nicely with the TV special in that way. Uh, yeah, I think yeah, Plain Pat, Dot to Genius, like you said, none of the production really stands out. Certainly nothing new,
Mhm.
um, and it's really up to Cuddy, I think, on the songs to fill out those songs and like make them feel whole. And sometimes, again, like I said, the verses are a bit thin, so it's like the song is just a bit blah or a bit undercooked. But sometimes he can really deliver those vibes that you want from Cuddy.
Yeah, you hit on the main ones. I think "Do What I Want" really stood out for that delivery, like you talked about. Kind of reminds me of like, I think it's at the end of, is it at the end of Mr. Rage? Or there's another, maybe another song where he kind of no, I can't remember which song it is I'm thinking of, but he has this one old song that I can distinctly remember the outgoing verse, and it just reminds me of that so much. So definitely that throwback vibe you talked about. "Living My Truth" is kind of similar to that in that vein, where I think it's like just this beat that he rides so well, and it feels like a classic kind of Cuddy song. Yeah, 2 Chains. Anytime you get him on a song, he just elevates it, and I really loved that one too. Can't believe it. Um, yeah, I mean, I think overall, just a really nice record from him. It's not going to be anyone's top 4 or 5, and we'll probably do a Cudi rankings at some point, so that'll be fun to talk about, revisit this. But yeah, I just was happy to see this from him, and like I said, especially given some of the other people in the news right now, and some of the music we've gotten from his peers, it's nice to see him just kind of thriving. So happy for Cudi for sure. But why don't we move on to another elder statesman of rap who dropped a record that we needed to get to, and that's Freddie Gibbs. Soul sold separately. Dave, I mean, Freddie Gibbs. When you think about him in terms of rap today, how do you view him?
One of, if not the best rappers over 40, right? He's one of the best OGs, and he has had arguably the most unconventional path to that status.
Hmm.
And this is being billed as Freddie Gibbs' major label debut, which is hilarious to me because he's previously been signed and through collaboration work with Madlib has released major label records. But this is technically Gibbs's proper solo rapping debut on a major, technically. Whatever. But yeah, I think Gibbs has obviously been on a huge heater for the past several years in like the third act of his career. Really, he's had many starts and stops in terms of finding success as a rapper, and now he's at the point where he can make a Gibbs album with an expensive beat budget and lots of A-list features. Like that's the Gibbs album we just got. So I'm just really happy for him to be that he's now at this point where he could do what he just did.
Yeah, and you talked about how he's one of the OGs, the best over 40. I think just maybe like pound for pound, putting out some of the best, most interesting, competent records in the game. No, don't even need to really qualify it in a
Mhm.
lot of ways. And I think he just kind of continues that streak on Souls sold separately. Out of his last 3 releases, Pinata, Alfredo, and this, I'd probably say it's my third favorite. But I mean, like you put those 3 up against any other rappers, like last 3, even someone like Kendrick, and you're probably like, well, I might take those 3 over some of the 3 from
Yeah,
anybody
yeah.
else. So, pretty impressive stuff. And I think this starts off right off the bat. Like, couldn't be done with Kelly Price. Just straight banger to like start this record off. And I was like, okay, we're off. We're back in the Freddie Gibbs world, and just sounds immaculate. Sound has that like classic vibe to it. Really loved that track. Um, what was that? Did that song kind of pull you in, or was there a different one that really got you
Yeah,
into it?
totally. I think just generally like Freddie, he's a really strong storyteller,
Yeah,
so that like any song he's on, he just has like immediate like presence and gravity on the mic. And when you have like uh you know the soul sample
yeah,
right off the bat on Couldn't Be Done, and this beat where like the drum hits like 4 times right in a row, it's like just pumps you the fuck up. And then you actually have Clay Price vocals
yeah.
coming in later. Like, yeah, I thought that was an amazing start.
Yeah, and then riding over that piano, it's just like it keeps the energy up the entire time. Just really great. Blackest in the Room, the next one I really liked too. I feel like it just is like the pictures that we both have are him just like sitting at this piano in this immaculate like silk suit and just looking great. And this is kind of what I imagine is him just like sitting in like one of these like amazing like ballrooms, like sipping on whiskey and like rapping this. Like he's just sounds fucking awesome in this. What other songs stood out to you? Where I take them all.
Oh yeah, of course. I really did enjoy hearing Gold Rings, Gibbs
Mm,
going bar for bar with Pusha T,
yeah,
his fellow killing it in his 40s rapper. God, man, we say this all the time whenever Pusha drops music, drops features, whatever it is. But he just continues to find new ways to say what he's always been saying. I thought this was like these are some of his best lines. Like my cocaine novella soap opera shit. These are the days of our pies. Like Jesus fucking Christ, Pusha T. Like never change, never stop, man. It's the best. Uh,
It's amazing to have Rick Ross and Pusha T, just two
oh
of
my
like the
god,
all time best, just like drop in, give a verse, and like dominate a song on the same
totally.
record. Incredible.
Ross, another one who's just aged so gracefully, aged like fine wine as he's found greater success and interest outside of hip hop, but he's not fallen off really in any way as a rapper. Whenever you do hear him, he was great too on Lobster Omelet. Um,
What a ridiculous name, dude.
totally. Yeah, I think Grandma Stove towards the end there, Music Soul Child, really great storytelling from Freddie there. Man, I think what's really cool about Soul Sold Separately is that it's Freddie kind of bringing what he has been doing and having other producers fill that in for him, because of course his like latest arc of his career and like the critical like leveling up as he's grown more popular and more accepted, he's been doing lots of collaborative albums, right? Last album, Alfredo, all made by The Alchemist, and of course, famously, Pinata and Bandana from Madlib, and then even the Freddie album by Kenny Beats. Now he has an album where most of those guys are back, but only doing one or two songs, right? And you're getting all these people kind of dropping in on you. And I'd love hearing a song like Rabbit Vision, where it's like an amazing Freddie performance, and then you just have like the Justice League like dropping their keys the way they always do, just like A-list, producers doing what they do. DJ Paul on
Yeah,
PYS as well, same kind of thing. Um, I really appreciate just hearing kind of everyone, all these A-list producers, kind of like coming to work with Freddie, and like it still feels like a Freddie record first.
absolutely. Yeah, just in the second half of the album, I really like Dark Hearted. I just feel like the way he raps in this, he's like rapping so fast and with so much energy, and like just so much control. It's really impressive, really technical song. What did you think of Feel No Pain with Hawk and Raekwon?
Yeah, pretty good. I thought Anderson sounded good, and yeah, I mean, it's always nice to hear the chef, another person who's aged gracefully, always dropping good features. Uh, yeah, that was pretty good. The only feature I thought was kind of weird on this, honestly, was Offset with Pain and Strife track 3, just because I thought Offset, like the delivery he was doing almost reminded me of like Little Wayne. I was like, this doesn't really sound like Offset. Like it sounded kind of off to me. Uh, no pun intended. But yeah, I liked Anderson Paak. I liked Raekwon for sure.
Yeah, that it's funny. I agree with the Offset. I think he was almost like too auto tuned or something. I'm not really sure, but yeah, the Pac song was interesting because as I was listening through, I didn't see that it was coming up, and then I was like, is this Anderson Paak? And then I was kind of like, well, when you get Rick Ross two songs before and then push it a few songs later, it's kind of forgettable in a sense. But I think on a lot of
Hmm.
other records, it would have been a standout. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, this record ruled. Like Freddie Gibbs just putting out quality shit after quality shit. It's incredible. So
Yeah, totally. You'd have to imagine after getting a Grammy nomination for Best Rap Album the last time around, he's probably a contender to do that once again. Uh, and that would be at the Grammys. Oh no, shit, that'd be 2 Grammys from now. He has missed the cutoff, so we'll see. How'd you like the like celebrity like cameos? You had like Kevin Durant and Joe Rogan, and to me, my favorite one was Jeff Ross. I thought he was just quite funny. But like the concept of like Freddie being like in Las Vegas finishing this album and having these people
mhm.
like checking in to motivate him or telling him to come hang out or telling him to get his shit together, whatever it was. But it was like all these like cameos. Like, what would you feel about that? Usually they were outros on songs.
I really like Jeff Ross. That one really stood out to me. Really made me laugh. To be honest, the rest of them pretty forgettable.
Yeah.
Also, Kevin Durant, man, like I'm not telling you to shut up and dribble at all, but like I just want to see you like really crush it with Brooklyn. Like I just really want to see you like really focus this season. So
Well, it was the shortest cameo of
it
all. He's
was, it
like,
was.
"Yo, Gibbs, it's KD. What's good?" or whatever. That was
Yeah,
it. So probably didn't get in the way. But
yeah.
Jeff Ross like calling Freddie a rabbit fucker or whatever the fuck it was, like super funny.
Saying he wanted to get him on to warm up for Ti. I was dying laughing. That really good stuff. Um, yeah, check out Sold separately. Highly recommend it. We're gonna put a song or two on our Nostalgia Best of 2022 playlist. Let's move on though to Stray Kids, a K-pop group that just seems to be fucking dominating the charts, man. I mean, like these guys, this is their second record this year with Maxident, and they just seem to not be able to miss right now, right?
Yeah, second release this year to go number one. Maxident's on track to go number one with around 100,000 units. Definitely uh, awesome to see big success in the West, which would make sense because JYP Entertainment has a distribution deal with Republic Records that has been extended to Stray Kids and ITZY. So it makes sense that we're seeing, as we've been talking about ad nauseum, more and more K-pop acts finding acceptance and then, in fact, success in the Western market. And Stray Kids have been kind of rapidly rising. I think for me, I hadn't been thinking about them all too much until we heard Felix, one of the 8 Stray Kids members. We heard Felix on his label mate Nyan's solo debut album earlier this summer on that song No Problem. I thought he was an awesome compliment on that song, and I really like that track in general. And I was like, you know what? I need to pay more attention to Stray Kids because I'm just sleeping because they're really popular.
Do you feel like Maxident kind of showed you why they're so popular?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. It's an EP. It's their ninth EP slash mini album. They've only been around since 2018, but that's 9 EPs and 2 full-length albums. A lot of music, and this one is interesting. We kind of talked about this recently with Blackpink, where like short release, right? And then a bunch of these tracks, it's only some of the group, some of the members. They're
Mhm.
not all full Stray Kids tracks. So that being said, I think there is a fair amount of that variety, that genre flipping, that switching up that we talked about recently with NCT 127, and I thought that was cool to hear. Um, they are pretty hip hop heavy,
Mhm.
and I do like that about them. And I think some of those moments are really strong. Production wise, I don't know if anything really wowed me per se on this one, but I definitely get it, and I'm looking forward to hearing more for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of genre hopping, and they really span from like really going for rock on something on like three Racha,
Hmm.
I guess. I don't know. I guess that's the song that was that. Is that the song I'm thinking of? Or was Super Bored? Now I'm forgetting
Now, I
which
don't
one
think it
was
was
the one.
Three Racha. Three Racha is more of like a Three Racha is pretty hard, but that's almost like a drill song specifically in terms of
Yeah,
rapping.
no, you're right. You're
But
right.
there was guitar popping up on this on I think it was "Give Me Your TMI."
Yes, yes. I'm sorry. That was the one
Yeah.
I was thinking of. Um, but that one is almost like too poppy to be rock,
Hmm.
Like, and that's the thing is, I feel like they never quite go that far. But there's some really like hard, like banging, like thumping production on this, which I think makes it feel a little bit harder than it actually comes across.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, because like some of these hooks, and some of the songs, I was a little bit like, huh, this feels almost like a little like childish at times. Like with Circus, it kind of has that like that. I think they actually like mimic that at one point, or
It
on one of
makes sense
them.
per the name.
Yeah, and on one of them, it might have been the first one. They actually like did like these other like noises that were like whoa, or like so. I was like, oh, this just feels young. And I think that's what I came away with is these guys feel like they're aiming towards like a younger fan, which
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense for these groups. But I wasn't super like drawn in by
Right. Yeah. Those stray kids, they're still kids at the end of the day.
it.
Uh, yeah. I think Case 143, the first song, the title track, the single, etc. I think it's pretty catchy, and it starts off like really hot with the rapping. But because they like genre mash, they kind of like switch up some of these songs where it's like this is like hard hip hop in the one sense, and then it's like immediately become like completely different pop. And as you said, almost more of a like younger leaning pop. I think of like NCT Dream comes to mind as like a younger guys trying to make younger like teen music. And I think Stray Kids, they seem to be really popular because of that genre mash, right? And like we've talked about the genre mash a lot, and I think that's what's really commendable about a lot like the release we're getting these days, right? It's like I mentioned NCT 127, but what about like ATs, right? Like that
Mhm.
record this year was all over the place in like this super maximalist way, and I guess Stray Kids on Maxident are trying to go for that. I just don't know if they don't quite commit to it as much as I would like, and it's an EP, it's a mini album. There's only so much
Right.
time, right? Um, I think to me, probably Three Racha stood out as my favorite track because that
Yeah.
is just three of the members on there, the guys who do most of the producing, and actually do like drill hip hop from on the K-pop side of things is pretty revelatory, just because you're not really hearing drill from the K-pop people, right? Um,
Completely
and
agree.
I mean, it was pretty hard. I have to give it to him. Like I think that in general, like the bar for rapping in K-pop these days has been raised. Like it's not nearly as corny as it used to be. So that
Yeah.
definitely counts for something.
No, I agree. Three Racho was a clear standout. The one I was thinking of was Can't Stop, as
Mm.
like the rock one. So yeah, I agree. Like that and Give Me Your TMI. Like they're so close to being like this like real rock sound, but they kind of cut it with this pop infused like energy.
Right.
Um, yeah, like you said, this is a EP. They're not gonna be able to flesh out all their everything that they want to do perfectly on it, and that's okay. They're still like a fairly young group, like you mentioned, only formed I think 3 or 4 years ago. So
Right.
a lot of growth for them. I think more than anything, the fact that they can be putting out stuff that I think is very clearly not their best stuff and still like getting number one on the charts is like they're going to be in
Yeah.
contention for most popular K-pop group beyond BTS and Blackpink. So pretty good place to be for sure. Any last thoughts? You ready to move on?
Yeah. No, sounds good.
Let's keep it moving. And we're gonna stay with someone who's a little bit more rock than them, Dave. And she's just using this as a coping mechanism. That's Willow with the new
Damn.
album Coping Mechanism. Uh Willow, when you think about her as an artist, what comes to mind?
Caught a vibe
Yeah,
once
right?
again, baby. We're waiting a minute. We're whipping our hair back and forth. Our souls are transparent. Willow Smith back in the news. Only a year since the last record. Shout out Willow getting to work. I love it. Uh, yeah, I think what I think of these days, separating her from her famous lineage, of course, she clearly has her own identity, her own career as herself, which is awesome. I think of how like kind of uncannily she's become this really popular figure from like Gen Z artists, like she has a lot of TikTok hits in particular, like wait a minute, and forget the song, the one where Cloud Vibes from, like those are songs that
He
like
had
were,
her spot.
yeah, those are like those are slow burns. Those are
Hmm.
like TikTok discoveries, right? Like wait a minute, that record from several years ago was not super well liked, and yet now it's approaching like 800 million streams and it's like really lasted. And I think it's cool that Willow is finding ways to just do the sake of her music. She's like genuinely like getting to that point. She's not really like trying to make like viral songs. And yet Transparent Soul last year took off on TikTok anyway.
Yeah.
And I think Willow is one of the most genuine and successful of like pop artists these days that is doing rock music. We've talked about this a lot with rock becoming much more popular in the mainstream, and we're seeing artists dabble in that, fully transition to that, right? Olivia Rodrigo, Machine Gun Kelly, Halsey, the list, Demi Lovato just last month, 2 months ago, the list goes on. But Willow comes across as super genuine, and I think it's just because she's doing it really well, and that continues on Coping Mechanism.
Yeah, I think she's really found a lane for herself that she feels super comfortable in. The reason I asked what your initial thoughts of her were is because yeah, it was almost hard for me to listen to this record without being like, oh, I can hear where this like TikTok moment's gonna come from this song. Like it almost feels like, and I think she has a real knack for it, but it almost feels like she almost frames these songs in a way where she's definitely has an idea for the song, but she tries to find these really like catchy like moments that really stand out. Something like
Hmm.
on the second track, Falling Endlessly, like the chorus there just feels like it's so prime for like a TikTok like I don't know trend where like girls are just like singing along to it and like maybe like doing like a change of like clothes or something. Like I could just like see all this stuff
Start the
happening.
trend, babe. Get your credit.
Yeah, I should be the first one to
Transition.
do it. If anyone that follows my TikTok knows I post all the time, so I'll definitely catch on quickly. But yeah, I think what I kind of came away with is like this is a genre that works for her. She has a knack for these songs, and she keeps it fucking moving, which I really appreciate. These
Yeah.
songs are quick. She's in, she's out. You have a couple cool moments. Doesn't stay overstay its welcome. I was like, oh, I enjoyed that. So I left feeling very satisfied with coping mechanism. I think.
Yeah, totally. I don't think it really changed my opinion uh, any more than just hearing last year's Lately I Feel Everything. Like, these two records very much feel of a piece, released a year apart from each other. And she's just, like you said, I think keeping it moving. The reason I think a lot of these songs just kind of naturally seem to find that viral success is the songs are just kind of tightly written, right? There's tight
Yeah.
hooks on these, the guitar loops, whatever it is. These are tight 3 minute tracks, and she's just they're just really well done. And
Mhm.
you're just people are clearly appreciating that as well, and finding catchy moments themselves, and thus songs blow up. And cool, good for her, right? Um, I think there were some moments though that stood out within the span of the record. Obviously, it's a rock record, but sometimes the guitars stand out more than others. I thought right off the bat, maybe it's my fault. I really enjoy the guitars on that. And then I think my favorite song would be Hover, Like a
Mm.
Goddess. I think Willow's performance on that is very impressive. It just mixes really nice with this up-tempo song, really engaging drums and guitars. I thought that one was the best of the group. But cool to hear Eve's Two More as a feature,
Yes.
right?
Very
Uh,
cool. I really loved that
yeah.
song. Perfectly Not Close to Me. I thought that was really cool and definitely the hardest song that she had on this. Going back to Hover Like a Goddess, the guitars on that really reminded me of like the Strokes or the Bravery. Like it was a little more up tempo, but she really like I agree. Her performance in that is really great. I thought that one was great. I liked Curious Furious. I thought that one was a pretty cool song. And like that's another song that like you better open wide. Like you're gonna be hearing that on TikTok very soon, I bet. And yeah, I thought the title track was also a pretty good song. I don't know, just like real like whirring guitars on that. Like she was really going for the punk in that. I appreciate that, and I agree. Like she keeps these songs written really tightly. She's a well-oiled machine at this point, and it's funny because like you mentioned her famous family, but I really think she has really made a lot of headway in carving her own lane. Whereas I don't really see her brother in the same way. I think she's a level above him at this point.
Oh, no
So
question. Sorry, Jaden.
yeah, so it's just like cool to see her in this lane. Also, she looks great with the shaved head. I love the
Totally.
look for her. So
Yeah. She's really blossomed after really becoming public at like 10 years old, 11 years
mhm,
old, whatever. How she was super young when Whip My Hair started,
I know.
and she's had many musical identities and sounds, of course, as she went through her teenage years, and uh, seems to have really found what's working right now. So good for her.
Absolutely. Well, we're gonna be adding a song from Willow to our playlist, but we're wrapping up music today in the only place that's appropriate to wrap up with Dave's guy Charlie. Dave, on a scale of 1 to 10, would you say you're a 100 on the Charlie Puth fan scale?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if I'm at 100, but definitely a huge fan of Charlie Puth, specifically a huge fan of that second album, the until recently most recent Charlie Puth album, and that would be Voice Notes from early 2018. I just thought he really leveled up, and to me, that's my favorite, like, pure pop album from a male vocalist in recent memory. Like, I think there's just some fucking joints on that one, man. Like, he always had the talent and songwriting ability. Originally started his career as a writer. People know the story, but like after initially bombing with the debut album Nine Track Mind, to like completely change the narrative with Voice Notes. Like there's songs on that, like good, like 5 6 songs I still love from that album, and I think since then, of course, he's gotten even more famous. Like he's clearly as popular as he's ever been,
Oh
and
yeah.
a big part of that is just kind of imbuing his personality into TikTok by
Yep.
showing his creative process as a songwriter who's clearly very talented and very thoughtful, but also as a classically trained music producer as well. Of course, going to Berkeley school of music for like music production. Like he's really well trained, and like he just has a knack for showing that, right? So the anticipation for the third Charlie Puth album, as the wait stretched on past 4 years, for me was quite high. And I think it was quite high for a lot of people, just because he had recently given us some like great tracks, and now he had just been teasing everyone with songs that sounded pretty cool in their unfinished forms on TikTok. So I had a lot of anticipation for this third album, Charlie.
And did it live up to your expectations, Dave? That's my question.
Yeah, that's a great question. To be frank, I don't like this as much as Voice Notes. It's different than Voice Notes, and I think even like mild disappointment from Charlie Puth, similar to the Rina Sawayama album we just got, where like when the bar is so high and the talent is so evident, and like the goals of the music is at a pretty high level, like there's still lots of things to appreciate and admire and take away from albums that don't fully like satisfy you. And that's how I feel about Charlie, where like I think just the production style, and to his credit, he produced this all by himself this time around. Awesome to see someone signed to a major album, major record label like he is on Atlantic, to see someone like have that much control over their career in their prime this way, and just be like, no, I'm just gonna do this myself, and really cool. But the thing that like kind of irks me about it is like he has tuned up his vocals pretty consistently on Charlie. And not that he hasn't done that in the past, but on Voice Notes, he just sounded so much more timeless to me. And like Puth's a corny dude, right? Like he always has been. He's a theater kid. But like he had some like sexy ass fucking songs on Voice Notes, man. I don't know if I quite hear that the same way on this. Like I'm not as interested in Charlie Puth telling me why he's a sad boy right now because some girl broke his heart. Like I don't really care about that as much. Like I just really like him doing melodic math because he's a fucking amazing songwriter, you know? And yeah, so I have mixed feelings on this. There's some songs I do dig, but as a big Charlie fan, it's like, I wish he just did more of the other thing.
Yeah. He has a song on this called "When You're Sad, I'm Sad," and listening to this album, he was
Nice.
sad and he made me sad. So, um, you know, I really didn't like this very much. I'd say there's probably two or three songs that I thought were pretty good. The
Mhm.
clear standout is the one we've heard the longest, which is Light Switch. Like that song is just like such a shot of like bubblegum pop adrenaline in this whole thing. Like you
Mhm.
mentioned, a lot of the rest of it is him kind of talking about this loss and how he sees himself from it, and how he's coping. And I'm like, man, I don't know. I don't come to Charlie Puth to like come and get in my feelings. Like I have Christine and the Queens for that if I need it. You know, I have Adele for that. I don't come to Charlie for that. I want to hear the bops, and there weren't many on this.
I know, man. There's so many pops on Voice Notes. Yeah, and I think what's a bit disappointing too, like to me, like I don't even like Light Switch that much. It's like really tightly made, and that was a song he teased extensively on
Yeah.
TikTok before he officially released it. And it's kind of the sequel to the first time he did that with a song he didn't officially release, which would be the song, in quotes called "Me and You," which you can listen to like it's been pieced together on YouTube through all his TikToks, and people have basically made the song themselves. That one is like super catchy and super cool, and he just never put it out and didn't make this record. But like, yeah, Light Twitch is like, yeah, it's pretty good. And like Left and Right with Jungkook from BTS, like, yeah, it's pretty good. And like if you have like spatial headphones on, you can hear the directional audio of the left and the right. Like, yeah,
Hmm.
it's pretty cool. But like, and like, I think Charlie Puth is so talented that like he can like kind of like crap out like uninteresting songs that also happen to be still like really tightly made and like tightly written. That I was like, man, I was like, you know what? I was like, it's still pretty good. That's still like a 7 because like your worst work is usually like a 7. But like, I'm not listening to you hear sevens. I want to hear the nines, you know?
Yeah.
And for me, I think the one moment where I was like, oh, this is actually like super brilliant from Charlie, which would be, I believe it's the most recent single. There's like 6 singles now, I think, which would be track 2, Charlie Be Quiet. I
Yeah.
think
That's another good
that
one.
one that one rocks like straight up. And like Charlie as the producer really shines on that, right? Where he does all these key changes as a performer, and he really switches up uh the sonics, right? Like when the chorus comes in, it's like super distorted and like really cool. But then when you get to like the full on verses after the chorus, they're like super catchy because shocker, Charlie Puth can really write. And I think that's a song that's like super interesting and much more interesting than really anything else on the record. And I was really running that one back a lot after really digging into it this weekend when I heard the full album.
Yeah, that song "Shall I Be Quiet." The production around the chorus is great, and sometimes his voice gets toned down to like Brandon Urie's like
Mhm.
level, from Panic at the Disco, which I think is pretty cool. His vocals are definitely pretty malleable all over this record. Um, Another song I liked, and it gave me like real like 2010s like pop like soft rock vibes, was "I Don't Think That I Like Her." I don't know, I think it might have been the "wow wow wow" at the beginning. I don't know if that's a synth or if that's like some guitar distortion, but I also the chorus is so like, I don't know, early like Panic at the Disco maybe still. I don't know. I guess I was getting heavy like soft
Yeah,
Panic at
sure.
the Disco vibes on this, but yeah, that was those were the three songs that I really liked off this. The rest I was like, man, even the one where you get the BTS member Young Kook on here, I was like, man, we gonna get like a BTS bop here? No, we get another sad song. So
Yeah.
where we're at with our guy
Yeah, I
Puth.
mean, shout out Jungkook though. Like Left and Right is now the uh fastest song featuring a K-pop soloist to get to 300 million streams. It's like whoop de doo, but BTS Army will love anything, I think.
Anything.
Yeah, like there's a lot of production I appreciate. Like on Loser, I love the drums. On Marks on My Neck, I like the way the drum hits on that. Tears on My Piano, the bass and the kick drum sounds good. Like it's really well produced. I just don't like the choices with the vocals for the most part, and it's just a bit distracting or like kind of like numbs the edges of like his good writing. Like the writing is usually pretty good, and even like the lyrics sometimes can be a bit up and down. Like the song construction is always like really tight, just because that's how talented he is. And I just hope the next one isn't 4 years later.
Well, hopefully we get something a little more upbeat soon. But that's gonna do it for us for music today. So again, check out our Nostalgia Best of 2022 playlist on Spotify. Uh, Dave, let's talk some stand up here real quick. We have some big hitters that drop specials to get to. We're gonna start with Nick Kroll, who we just talked about in "Don't Worry, Darling" a
It's
few
great.
weeks back. Check out our "Don't Worry, Darling" review if you haven't listened to that. But I mean, Nick Kroll, I feel like I really became aware of him with the league, right back when we were
Yes.
like just out of college. The league based on fantasy football, pretty funny show.
FX comedy series.
Flamed out pretty quickly, but really he stood out just as this,
Ruxin.
yeah, ridiculous character Ruxin. And then you start seeing him everywhere. Obviously, I think Big Mouth is how a lot of people know him now, but he's just been in a lot of things, I'd say, right?
Oh yeah. Well,
And
he's been on TV, working in and around TV and film for a long time. Like even before the Kroll show, like he had been around just as like an actor, basically comedic actor. And Little Big Boy, this is Nick's first Netflix special, but only his second special. The other one was on Comedy Central way back in I think it was 2011. Yeah, thank you, very cool. Like, it's been a long time, and that's because I don't really think of Nick Kroll as like a stand up per se. I just kind of think of him as a funny actor. So to hear, I think Nick Kroll now bring you like the first special he's made after finding all this success, right? As the one of the creators of Big Mouth, where he's gotten tons of accolades. Now, what's he want to do? And this special was supposed to come out in 2020 because he had started touring this material back in 2019. So we obviously now heard a different version of this once he finally had a chance to record this. But yeah, I definitely was interested to hear like, oh, well, what's a Nick Kroll special like these days? Because he's definitely more or less at his career peak. As Big Mouth is about to have a new season come out.
uh, after listening to this, it was hard for me to not just be like, "Oh, I feel like we just watched an episode of Big Mouth like live," like a live version of Big Mouth, because even his like one of his running gags through this is how his like inner monologue is
Jason
oh man, yeah,
Statham.
Jason Statham, thank you. And when he was doing the voice, I was like, is this just the puberty monster right now? Like, is this like, because
Okay.
it sounded just like who I think is actually done by Will Arnett, but I was like, this is pretty close. And then I was like questioning, is Will Arnett actually the voice of the puberty monster? It was like a whole thing. But like he would also like when he was talking about like older stories, he would like talk about this like girl who pulled his pants down and like pantsed him and his pants came all the way down and like how it was traumatizing for him. But when he did her voice, he was like, "Oh my god!" And I was like, "Oh wait, that's just like the annoying girl from Big Mouth right there." And it was like hard for me to almost like separate that he is just like this separate person who's not just that show, because I think the show feels like such a him and Mulaney creation in so many ways, and it is obviously, but like it just feels like them. And so the stand up was pretty hit or miss for me at times, but I definitely found it to be an entertaining hour for sure.
Yeah, totally. I think it largely like faded out for me towards the end. Like I didn't appreciate as much of the routines about like his love of snacks or his annoyance with his mom. Like it kind of faded out for me around that time. But I mean, a lot of the toilet humor I found really funny. You know, like the way he would set up, like the way he was like gonna shit his pants and stuff was like
Yeah,
was pretty funny. You know, just like those
driving the
anecdotes of
Italian countryside and
right kilometer
Jason
Kroll.
Statham. Or when the driver was like, or the gas station, or no, it was the rent a car guy was
Yeah,
like coming out like
Hertz
making fun of
Bologna.
him. Yeah, that's really great. Loved all that. You know, I think some of the pieces that didn't really hit for me as much were when he was like talking about like breakups. You know, with
Mm.
his like long term girlfriend before he met his wife. A lot
Seemed
of that
pretty
stuff.
sad. That one
Yeah,
breakup was pretty tough.
for real. And I just was like, man, this is like not fun to listen to. And I don't know if any of the punchlines really like saved that for me. So I don't know. Like I said, it was hit or miss. But I think overall, just like he's a really funny guy, really talented, someone that seems to be a really liked creator in Hollywood. So I think we're gonna be
Yeah.
seeing him a lot more.
Yeah, totally. It was kind of funny where like he would almost like it was definitely not off script, but it would like come across as off script where he'd like go into like demon mode for a second, like hide behind the stool and be like laughing at his
Yeah.
own joke and be like, "You can't see me," you know. It's like that's where like kind of like the manicness of like Big Mouth kind of comes out, I suppose. But like,
Hmm.
yeah, you know, like I don't think anyone again like he's not the one. He's not ripping specials off every 2 years. You know, he's
Right.
more or less that's not his thing. So to hear uh Nick Kroll just kind of tell be funny for a little bit, you know, I was like, okay, cool. Like I don't have high expectations for this.
Yeah, and I think you said it right, because I didn't go in being like, "This is going to be the best stand up I watch all year." I was like, "Oh, let's see what Nick Kroll's got," and I thought he was pretty great. So overall, definitely would recommend checking that out. But let's switch gears over to another special stand up special that just dropped this past weekend. Hasan Minhaj, the morning show. Hasan Minhaj. No, no. The Daily Show, Hasan Minhaj. No, no, no. The Patriot Act, Hasan Minhaj. I think
Yes,
that's really who we got, right? This was like
correct.
Hasan Minhaj doing a live version of the Patriot Act that's more like meditative on his own life. And that
Hmm.
I think really worked. I found this to be a really like compelling special. I thought really interesting. I liked him splicing in the clips. And overall I was like, yeah, hey, I like him. I don't know if I find him to be like the funniest comic out there, but I think his social commentary and his perspective as an Indian comic is, oh no, sorry, Pakistani comic is really, really great.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. This is his Hassan's second Netflix special, The King's Jester, first since 2017. Been a little while since 2017. Of course, the Patriot Act came and went, and Hassan has become much more famous. And I mean, good for him, right? Like rising up from being a Daily Show correspondent to hosting the White House Correspondents' Dinner to then getting his own Netflix series and being, I think, the most successful person doing something that has largely been unsuccessful on streaming, which is like the talk show
Mm.
weekly release variety format. Like that hasn't really worked on streaming, and they're not really trying as much anymore. And of course, Patriot Act did get canceled after I think like 30, 40 episodes, whatever it was. But like he definitely made his mark doing that, and to then more or less bring that into his comedy, as he said, PowerPoint comedy, as he called it. Like kind of doing that, uh, kind of cool, right? Like you had this very visually distinct set stage that he was a part of for this special. Like, it wasn't just him standing on a normal theater stage, and like it kind of like fit that vibe of there being this like video screen behind him that would be perfectly in sync with as were his points as he got to them. And like, it's obviously like the King's Jester is like super written and choreographed, right? And you know, like you said, is Hasan the funniest guy? No, not necessarily. But like, I'm almost like not necessarily like watching him to laugh per se. You know, it's almost like when we just watched Rothaniel from Gerard. It's like, nah, this is kind of different. It's like technically a comedy special, but this is just Hasan just kind of musing, in this case, on it, like Gerard in a certain sense, musing on himself and directly, like what he's experienced recently and how he feels about that, and just kind of intersplicing some jokes, some one-liners into that. You know, I think Hasan's view of, Southeast Asian culture and how that interfaces with America is always pretty funny to hear. You know, I did like his jokes about DOs versus MDs in terms of like straight up doctor humor, definitely playing to the room there a little bit, but I like a specific joke for sure. And yeah, I think, does Hasan like wow you with his like social commentary? I don't think he does either. Like, it's not like he's like super granular, super like uh informative on stuff necessarily too. Like, yeah, you might not know something he's telling you, but like, it's not like he's super deep in the weeds either. It's just like the package. Like, he's just really charismatic and really good at delivering these scripts, delivering these points he's come up with, and that's what makes him so compelling. It's like, I just like listening to him explain something to me and then make me laugh in a little bit,
Yeah, yeah. And I just want to clean it up. I had it right the first time. He is Indian, and I should have remembered with the joke where he was talking about Kumail and how Kumail getting so ripped like ruined
Yeah.
it for everybody. He's like,
Yeah.
that's why I like Aziz. He's just eating pasta and running around the Italian countryside.
Right. Yeah. On Patriot Act, he was like not supportive of Modi, and like a fellow Indian was giving him shit for it. That was pretty funny.
And then he came in and wanted to take a picture with him. Oh man, that was really great. Yeah, I agree with you. I really liked the choreography of this, like how sometimes he would like lay down and the camera would come from above and like zoom in on his face. Sometimes it would show him like watching the videos that he's doing, like the PowerPoints he's doing, which I thought was pretty cool touch. And yeah, I thought some of the humor was really like funny to think about when he was talking about the doctor humor, and he's like, I hope it's not this like certain doctor from Sacramento, and then it is that doctor. He's like, how are you a licensed doctor? And he's like, I don't even know, bro.
Bro, you're wearing Jordans right now.
So good. I also liked, you get a little bit of that Patriot Act Daily Show humor when he talks about the Saudis, and he has Jared Kushner in the room when he's doing his. Was that the White House Correspondents' Dinner? Was that what it was?
He said that was like a Time 100 like toast or something, a dinner, right. And he was like doing a toast or something, and he ad-libbed his way into that when he noticed Kushner walk in, basically.
Yeah, I just thought that was like a really like poignant and like right in his wheelhouse type of thing. So I really enjoyed that. I don't know. I think we kind of summed it up well. Where he's never gonna be the comic that I'm like, I need to like turn my brain off, just get a laugh. Like, he's always gonna try to bring you a little bit of the commentary. He's a little ridiculous, and I think overall just like super polished and like a showman. Mm-hmm. So it's fun to watch him.
Yeah, I liked how he would bring in like his relationship with his wife and like bringing his family into that. I don't know if like because he would obviously like the way you would like structure the specials, he would like, contrast where he's at his career with how that was affecting things back home, and like I don't know if it totally like lands like the gravity of his mistakes or crossing the lines. Like, I don't know, man. Like, you got some anthrax in the mail, maybe, but like. So does anyone who says shit about people. Like, I don't know if there was a line that Hasan was really crossing. He's a fucking comedian,
Yeah.
I liked the joke with the lawyer about the jurisprudence of jokes. That was well done.
That was great. How he thinks
Um,
his lawyer's cool now. It's
yeah,
like,
that was fun. Early on when he talks about adopting a white baby and everything with his like his daughter's school or whatever, like that was pretty fun. But like
mhm.
saying he wants to be the Diddy of comedy, that was good. But like him like being obsessed with like clout and likes and everything on social media, I don't know if that really like landed as well for me either. Like in terms of like how that was like striking like a wedge with his relationship with his wife. Like I didn't quite pick up on that as much. And like I don't know, like I feel like he almost was trying to bring it like too close to home, where I'd appreciate if he really just kept it more Patriot acty. I don't know, um, but it was still really well scripted and had a nice pace to it, and uh, he is really good at this style of thing. That much is clear.
Yeah. I I liked when he brought up the Daily Show and he mentioned Trevor Noah, who we haven't talked about at all, but like leaving the Daily Show, dating
Yeah,
Dua Lipa. I mean, the guy's just like, I don't know.
flexing.
Yeah, he's in a great spot in his life. But I was just thinking about like, yeah, I don't know if they have a replacement lined up for Trevor Noah yet. I don't think
Nothing
they
public.
do. And I wouldn't hate it if they offered it to Hassan, but I doubt he would take it. Just
They'll
kind of
probably
based on
offer
where
it
he's
to
at.
Ronnie Chang, who's still on the Daily Show.
That'd be smart, but do you think he's gonna take it? I feel like he's
Nope,
kind of past
don't
that.
think so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I
Hassan's
wonder.
past that for sure, and I mean, Corden's retiring too. Like late night is definitely changing, and like
Yeah,
what's next for Hasan, right? Patriot Act had a short but bright life, and he just released his second special. Now what's he gonna do? He was on the morning show season 2 as you reference in a small role. I can't imagine that's his main focus these days. Who can say? Um, but I think he definitely has a knack for like certain form of storytelling. Right? I think really early on, the way he tied in like his Muslim experience growing up to like post 9/11 America, where he got profiled and was very much at risk of perhaps being forced into giving like a false confession of some kind or being arrested uh, for something he obviously didn't do, and like that was like really poignant material, right? And he would tie that into other people that actually did experience that and how he like felt super close to that, and saying how like his first bit of comedy saved his life. I was like, definitely didn't expect to see that, right? Or hear that.
yeah.
um
I thought that was
he is
really well
real
done.
he is really good at finding humor in uh, less humorous material, right?
Mhm.
But I am curious to see what exactly he's up to next. I really don't know what he's gonna do.
Yeah, he feels like he has a lot of options, so I'm sure whatever
For
he
sure.
chooses to do, he'll do well. That's gonna do it for us for comedy, though. We're gonna switch gears and keep it moving to the big screen, where Amsterdam finally dropped. And Dave, I say finally because I have to say I had a lot of anticipation for this movie. You get David O. Russell, who I think people probably know, but I mean,
Mm.
I Heart Huckabee is probably the biggest one that he's done. But just kind of, what was the most recent one? I'm forgetting. American
Well,
Hustle? No. Silver
uh,
Linings Playbook?
Joy was the last one 7 years ago, 2015, and he had made a lot of noise in the 2010s, right? The
Yeah,
Fighter, a lot of
that's
accolades.
the one I was thinking of.
Then Silver Linings Playbook, then American Hustle, 3 Best Director nominations in a row for David O. Russell, and then Joy. Those later 3, Jennifer Lawrence, 3 Oscar nominations, including The Win, Silver Linings Playbook, and then he stopped making movies.
Yeah.
And didn't really do anything. 7 years later, here's Amsterdam, a film that was previously known as Canterbury Glass, and before that was untitled David O. Russell film for a while. Um, been a minute. You mentioned I Heart Huckabee's Three Kings. Like he's had a pretty storied career, even if it's been a bit up and down. And I think since then, obviously, a lot of anticipation for this film because the cast is just vast, and it had been such a long wait from him, given his track record. But he also has really come under fire a lot of bit for his actions on set,
Mhm.
and just in his personal life. And he seems to be a much more controversial figure out in the open. That is until unlike he was, when he was last making movies. So kind of interesting to interrogate one of his films now, especially because despite the anticipation that we both had for this film, it definitely doesn't meet those high expectations that would follow a ensemble cast from a big time director.
Yeah, so the fighter was the movie I was thinking of, but the last time him and Christian Bale worked together was the fighter, if
Mhm.
I'm reading this right. And now
Correct.
you get Christian Bale back, but you also get Margot Robbie, John David Washington, Chris Rock, Anya Taylor Joy, Zoe Saldana, Mike Myers, Michael Shannon, Timothy Oliphant, Taylor Swift. Like, you have so many big names here. This movie, in a lot of ways, when I think we first talked about it, almost felt like it was too big to fail in a sense, but this movie feels like a total failure. Not only does it feel like a bit meandering and like kind of aimless at times, but just like confusing, I think. And I by the end, I think the ending is okay, but like I don't really know if I totally got what the movie was trying to say a lot of the time, and it just kind of felt like a mess. I guess the best way to put it. What was your take on it?
Right. And also, Russell isn't exactly the best messenger anymore
Right.
for uh, a more top level, like, comment on how things impact society. Like, I wasn't expecting Amsterdam, the film, to be directly referencing slash adapting like real life history, the business plot,
Hmm.
as it were, to overthrow FDR. Um, yeah, it's. I think to me, it's like it's not as comedic as you'd hope, despite kind of suggesting it is, and it also isn't as like dramatically interesting from the like who done it side of things. Like right off the bat, Taylor Swift's character gets murdered by a hitman, Timothy Oliphant, and they're like, what's the deal with this, and why are they trying to frame John David Washington and Christian Bale? What's going on here, right? And then we're off to the races. But like, it doesn't really have that like dramatic pulse that you'd expect. You're kind of just going through the scenes. And am I disliking those scenes? Not necessarily, right? Like our core trio, Bale, Washington, and Margot Robbie.
They're great.
Hard to beat that, Like we're talking about like true talents here, and I really enjoyed them. Great to see Margot Robbie in a pretty sizable role here. I thought she was great. Um, Bale, bit a more understated uh,
Mhm.
personality to his character. Still kind of a big performance as we expect from Christian Bale, but uh, a bit different from Gore the God Butcher, obviously. Uh, and John David Washington, kind of reminiscent of some of his more recent roles. He just has a suaveness to
Yeah.
his presence as an actor that we like a lot. But yeah, I mean, like, I think there's a lot of plot in this movie because you're really rolling through plot as you're introducing characters. Many of them are just glorified cameos or one scene, two scene performances. But like because we're rolling through this plot, the plot has to, I think, be compelling to kind of drive the movie. And it's just the plot is not a good enough engine for the movie. It's really meandering, kind of unsatisfying story that it leaves you a bit wanting. Again, given the high expectations you associate with this cast, and like the cast is doing well. Like
Mhm.
seeing Anya Taylor Joy and Margot Robbie kind of like spar verbally. It's like, oh, great. I just wish they were doing something a little more interesting.
Yeah, you mentioned Bale and how like I think his performance is great. You can pretty much give Christian Bale anything and he's gonna be watchable. But near the end of the movie, they make this choice, right? So he's already kind of this like you see them in the flashback in Amsterdam, and all three of them are like just kind of like fun loving, having a great time, and they're coming back together years later by chance, quote unquote. Um, and they're all kind of worn down by life in different ways. And Bale is probably the one who I would say like drives the plot of the movie the most. He's kind of the storyteller. He's the one who's in the most scenes. But at the end, when Robert De Niro gives like his speech to the whatever the veterans gathering that they had was, he gets shot in the leg, and then he had already taken this like eye drop that was like this like basically like numbing like medication, and he doesn't talk for like the biggest scene in the movie, which is like fine, I guess. Like you didn't really need him because I mean you have a room of uh you know you have all the main characters there. Sorry, John David
Mhm.
Washington, Margot Robbie, Robert De Niro, Michael Shannon, Rami Malek. Like they're all sparring, so you didn't really need him. But it's like, man, he's been the one for the whole movie. This is like quite the choice to just like silence him here. You do kind of get like a in his head like flash forward type look, but just didn't really like make sense to me. And I just felt like there were choices like that all throughout the movie. Like even the beginning, you have Taylor Swift get killed, and then they immediately flash back to Amsterdam to explain this. And I was like, why didn't you put this first? Like I'm so confused. I was
Yeah.
confused for like 5 minutes. Like what's happening? And then like I understood, but that didn't make much sense to me. It also felt like you kind of had these random people. And I know that there's an air of mystery to this, but you have these like random duos, right? You have Michael Shannon and
Mike Myers,
Mike Myers together, right? And they're kind of
MI6, and CIA spies in
right.
disguise kind of thing.
And then you have Rami Malek and Anya Taylor Joy, and you have Chris Rock and I think I can't remember if he had a partner or not, but you
No,
just kind of
he
have
didn't.
like these random pieces, and it all just felt non cohesive. And I was like, man, I just don't know if this jumping around makes sense. And I gotta be honest, the storyline with Bale and his wife and her parents and Irma, played by Zoe Saldana. Thankless role for Zoe Saldana, first of all.
Hmm.
Like, what a waste. Give her more to do. But then, like Bale, like with his like marriage, I just like didn't really like that plot much or that part of it. So
Yeah.
I don't know. A lot I just didn't like.
Yeah, well, it's kind of frustrating because like you have this core trio, and like you said, we start off with like setting up the who done it and killing Taylor Swift, and then we flash back, and it's like actually the flashback and like learning about the genesis of this trio is just the most interesting stuff going on because those three have good chemistry, and that's just more fun to be with, and it's like
Yeah.
the plot's like besides the point. So I think it's just a bit ill conceived.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, I did appreciate seeing Ed Begley Jr. as Bill Meekins, the senator,
Yeah.
uh, because that's just Cliff Main from Better Call Saul to me. I was like, oh, my guy, nice to see you working.
Yeah, that was great. I also gotta say I did like De Niro in this. I feel like every time I've seen him recently, he's just been like a goofy old guy. So to see him playing like a serious old guy was kind of nice.
Mm.
And I felt like he gave probably the best performance I've seen him do in quite a while. So enjoyed that for sure. But any last thoughts? You ready to move on from this
Yeah, just
huge
talk about
disappointment?
a big disappointment after a big lead up. Also, this movie had a very unsuccessful opening weekend at the box office, and this movie was expensive. This is an $80 million budget apparently, so this is going in the bomb ledger, uh,
Yikes.
for sure for Fox. So tough one.
Well, Dave, we're on to Blonde. Netflix dropped this back end of September. We didn't get a chance to talk about it yet, but this is the highly lauded, highly anticipated biopic of Marilyn Monroe, starring Ana de Armas, that received, I believe she received like a 9-10 minute standing ovation at whatever the film festival was, Cannes, I think.
Yeah,
This
I think so.
premiered. Um, but I think that, similar to Amsterdam, critically getting panned in a lot of places. And so I was curious because to me, this felt almost like a movie that couldn't miss in a way. Ana de Armas, we are big fans of Ana de Armas here. Um,
Mm.
I was like, this is going to be a great look for her. It's going to be interesting to be going through this history. Obviously, there's going to be some difficult moments, but man, I left and I just was like, I feel like this movie was really missing something, and it kind of just left this like bitter taste in my mouth. While I think it was still really well done, like I just didn't enjoy the movie watching experience. It was very brutal. What about you?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's well done. It's well made
Yeah,
for sure. And Blonde actually premiered at Venice, not
Venice.
Cannes, so a little more recent. Um, yeah, I mean there was so much anticipation for this, right? Because Marilyn Monroe, to this day, you know, gosh, how many years after her death? 50 years, 60 years
Yeah,
after her death, 60 something years after her death,
almost
almost.
60.
Yeah, still a huge place in our culture, like iconography, just a big piece of Americana, and to see like a biopic, and there's been Marilyn biopics in various forms before, but like to get like a biopic starring one of our most in demand, uh, easy to watch performers in Ana de Armas, the first Andrew Dominic feature film in 10 years since Killing Them Softly came out in 2012. So yeah, it's really a tantalizing prospect. And I think Dominic had to this point had a pretty strong reputation as a more eccentric or you know in inactive filmmaker, basically. Where
Mhm.
when he directed 2 episodes of Mindhunter season 2 on Netflix, everyone's like, "Holy shit, this is awesome!"
Mhm.
And then like it comes out he's going to make Blonde, something he'd wanted to do for some time. It's like, oh wow, this sounds really good. And we've been talking about Blonde for a while because like we had known about it for so long with Anna attached. And there's this whole big kerfluffle about it getting an NC-17 rating officially, right? And
Mhm.
to be honest, I seemed kind of overblown. This seemed like it was perfectly fine as a rated R movie to me. Uh, there's nudity, there's some violence, but I don't see how it crossed the line there at all. Seemed a bit performative on Dominic's part. But yeah, I think the issue with Blonde and the reason that it's been getting a very polarized to negative reception is that it is a punishing watch. And, I think Richard Brody described it as Marilyn Monroe's Passion of the Christ. Like, it is a brutal thing to watch, not fun to watch. And I think most disappointingly, despite some true craft to the filmmaking that you expect from, someone with Dominic's eye, there's just not a lot under the hood of this screenplay. Like, it is really only about showing Marilyn Monroe's trauma, and has like this movie has no other point of view. And not that it has to be historically accurate. I don't care about that. It's not presenting itself as a documentary. That's fine. But it just seems a bit short sighted to only show Marilyn Monroe being brutalized and having a tough time through her career. Like, I just don't really know what the goals of this film were supposed to be. And it came across to me as honestly quite one note. And it's just a really punishing watch, once you get to 2 hours and 40 minutes and it finally ends.
Yeah, it starts right off the bat as brutal. Like the all the stuff with Julianne Nicholson and the abuse of Marilyn as a child, um, is just really, really tough to watch and like unsettling and up and heartbreaking. And from there, you know, the movie like had does this big time jump after Marilyn's dropped off at a um state like ward of the she's becomes a ward of the state at a foster home. And the jump is so like big that but you see her like acting in these actor circles and she's going for a tryout and you're like, oh okay, here we go. And immediately she gets raped right by a studio executive. And it's just
Yeah.
like within the first like 25 minutes you see
Goes to,
basically sorry, you
it's
just
suggesting it's David Zanuck, I think it is. One of the more out in the open casting couch guys at the time.
yeah, yeah, I think it was
Sorry,
Daryl
Daryl Zanuck.
Zanuck.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
um, but you see a child almost get uh drowned to death and then a rape, and it's just like this
Yeah.
is this you're in for a ride because there's another 2 hours and 10 minutes to go, so
Doesn't
it's
let up.
already really really rough. I mean, she is just brutalized by every single man in this in pretty much every single way except for I guess Arthur Miller, right? Arthur Miller, Adrian Brody is like the one like sweet person in her life.
Hmm.
um I mean
More or
Joe,
less accurate. Yeah.
your guy Joe DiMaggio, which I think this is actually like kind of based in some
Yeah.
reporting, is pretty terrible in this. uh
Yep. I mean, they were only married like
I
less than
think
a
a
year.
year, yeah.
Yeah.
um and yeah, I think just overall it's like a really unsettling movie. And it's even unsettling just in terms of like the time you spend with her on her own. And like even when she's with like Arthur Miller, like the way she like calls all of her like love interest daddy all the
Yeah.
time, and like the way they play up the daddy issues is like so like unsettling. It's really
Right.
really uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, this is a adaptation of the Joyce Carol Oates like pseudo
Biographical
bio
fiction.
yeah biographical fiction book of like 20 years ago. And giving her like a miss her father complex about her unknown father seemed to have been a creation. And it's like
Mhm.
I just don't think you weren't serving Marilyn Monroe as a character in this film. She doesn't have any agency,
Yeah.
even when she's not in the act of being abused in some way. You're only showing her at her most, at her lowest, really. And it's just a bit. I think it's just a bit limiting because
Mhm.
Marilyn Monroe, quite famously, was an intelligent person who had thoughts about a lot of stuff, and also was quite direct in dictating her career and what she would let people do to her and stuff like that, especially once her career advanced.
She started
And
her own production company
yeah,
as like a female in the 1960s.
like
Like that's
they
incredible.
barely they don't even like give it any credit, even though it's in the movie. But like she was studying acting in the heart of New York City. That's how she meets Arthur Miller. Like she was serious about what she did,
Mhm.
and the movie just doesn't give a shit about that. It just wants to get her to the next time that she gets fucking traumatized. It's just I just don't like how unintelligent like the storytelling came across, right? And then there's just some really off-putting shit. Like I don't need like 5 stills of like a baby in the womb, really abstract shit. And then
I
like
hated that.
completely lost me when she's having a conversation with her unborn kid. Like the movie's point of view on abortion is insane. Whether you are a pro or anti-abortion person, like the fact that any of that was in the movie at all, I think is ridiculous.
Yeah. It was really tough, and especially like when they show the her having the abortion. Not
Oh
only
my
do
god, yeah.
they like they frame it as she changes her mind at the last second and is forced to go through with it, which in of itself is brutal. But like showing them actually like cutting into the uterus with the scalpel was just like completely like unsettling. Um, and you do get a few moments where you get to see her like having some fun, right? You see her with Cass. Chaplin, Eddie Robinson, and like
Right.
really supposedly her like sexual awakening is what they're kind of
Yeah.
insinuating, and like
Also fabricated completely.
completely fabricated. There is like some record of her having a relationship with Cass Chaplin, briefly, and then apparently like that ended because she was sleeping with his brother, which is actually kind of like a funny story. It would have been
Yeah, that
actually
would have
pretty
been
funny
better
later
to
to see.
see, honestly.
Yeah, but like this like threesome or this triangle is like just totally fictionalized, and then they're kind of played up as like these villains that like are
Mhm.
like trying to exploit their time with her for like money from Joe DiMaggio, which I just thought was like completely like ridiculous. I mean maybe, but like I don't know, it just seemed really out
Right.
there. And then the next time you kind of get to see her like having fun, right, is like maybe on some of the sets where she's like kind of doing her thing, but like the scene where they blow up the skirt, I forgot what movie that's from, but like that's a really just like disgusting portrayal of that, this iconic moment in film, and then they
Right.
kind of have these guys like ogling at her
Yeah.
when she's dressed up in that.
That's true. Billy Wilder made it like an open set, which is
Yeah,
obviously
ridiculous.
would not fly today, obviously.
And then like the next time you see her, it's like she's so traumatized that she's like on set, and I think that's Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, where she's wearing the
Mhm.
pink, right?
Yep.
And she just is like totally losing it, like scratching her face and difficult to work with. And by all accounts, she was difficult to work with. But you go back to like, where is this supposed to be like a love letter to Marilyn Monroe? Like, or is this supposed to be like, wow, look how horrible her life was? Like, what am I supposed to be taking away from this movie? I don't really know what the messaging is in a lot of this.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, in a sense, it's kind of interesting to think about it as the third and hopefully final version of this kind of like alt biopics we've gotten lately with Pablo Larraín's Spencer and Jackie, of course, about Princess Diana with Kristen Stewart last year, and then a few years back, Jackie Kennedy from Natalie Portman.
Hmm.
They're all kind of similar things, but Blonde just takes it way too much to the extreme, and I think just kind of beats you over the head with ultimately how simplistic its view of the subject matter is as a movie. It's just really disappointing. Really disappointing in Dominic. Like he has not acquitted himself well in the press too, as he's talked about this film while promoting it. Like it just really turns you off. And definitely feel bad for Anna because like I think she does pretty good. There's a whole thing about like the accent and like I think she's quite convincing And just as a performer, as people know, she's just very she catches the screen. She's a really talented performer, and unfortunately, she just doesn't really have good material in this movie. Not really her fault.
Man, so if you had told me like beginning of the year we were going to be talking about these two movies on the same weekend and we are going to be disappointed by both, I would have been really surprised. And unfortunately,
Yeah,
that's kind of where we're at. Both these totally flopped.
yeah. I mean, I was expecting Blonde to be something. I wasn't expecting it to be similar to Josh Trank's Capone, but
Hmm.
that's what I thought of when I was watching
I I wouldn't have put it to that level, but it
it.
was definitely
There's more craft behind it from a
yes,
filmmaking perspective.
and a better like main performance, I'd say.
Yeah,
But
but
man,
man,
tough. Tough, tough, tough. Anyways, I think that's going to wrap it up this week. Dave, what do we got for next week?
next week, very exciting, the conclusion of Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, Season 1. Very excited to talk about that. Also, some movies are starting to come out with award season. The Kate Blanchett vehicle Tar from Todd Field, which is getting a lot of love. The Ruben Östlund Award winner, Triangle of Sadness. Of course, Marvel's She-Hulk is ending. And then some music from the 1975 and Little Baby. And after a long wait, MIA is releasing an album. Very exciting.
And Arctic Monkeys, dog.
No, that's not this. That's not next weekend,
Is
is
that
it?
is that the following weekend? Is that going head to
No,
head Taylor Swift?
correct. It is.
Oh
Mhm.
fuck. They're
Taylor
not.
Swift, Arctic Monkeys, and Carly Rae Jepsen on October
Wow.
21st.
It's a good weekend.
Yeah.
I can't wait for that. But we have some good stuff to talk about next week. So hit that subscribe on youtube.com/nostalgiapod. And follow us on Twitter at nostalgiapod. And you can follow the link tree for any way to follow us there. Catch you next week.